I always tell parents when they share with me that they're worried about what kind of parent they're going to be, or they're feeling anxious or nervous about, I just don't know. I don't know. I've never been around kids before. I don't know how to be a parent. And I always say, very similar to what Kara said, and a phrase that I use often is be who you needed when you were younger. And when you think about those people who showed up for you in your life, if you think about showing up for your child in that way, you can be that person to your child.
Welcome to the Birth Education Center podcast, hosted by myself, Kara Messer, an entrepreneur, birth educator, and doula. My team and I want to help you discover your options in birth and postpartum, how to find your voice, and how to use that voice to navigate our maternal healthcare system. You and your baby are not just a number. This information includes doulas too. Now let's get started. I'm excited for this episode because I think Ashley and I talk so much about bonding, especially in class 2, which is sexy class. If you have been to our series, you know what happens in class 2. We love class 2. Parents think about bonding as skin to skin after baby's here and all of the things that happen after to encourage bonding. But the truth is, and the science proves, that the earlier you bond with your baby in utero, which a lot of us feel very disconnected from those babies while they're in utero, except for kicks in the ribs, is that we make different decisions for our birth and for our postpartum because we're putting the baby in the forefront of those decisions instead of our pain, our pleasure, our comfort, our discomfort, whatever it is. We forget that this is actually the baby's birth and not our birth because we already had our birth with our parents. And when you start to connect deeply with your baby beforehand and get to know them, which you think, how can I? They're a little thing that moves inside of me. Sometimes I don't feel it. You're like, how do I do that? It is connection on a soul level a lot of times, and it's possible. And a lot of it comes through your imagination, and baby responds through our dreams. And those dreams are real for a reason. So I encourage you to listen to those. But we're going to open up the discussion on what you're thinking about now helps you bond with your baby. And then what kind of family are you creating for this baby, and what conversations are you having with your partner? And if you're solo and you don't have a partner by choice or whatever, talk to those around you that are going to be helping you raise this baby as to what kind of environment you're trying to cultivate and how we can start that process now.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, we think of bonding as this list of things we have to do once baby gets here to create that bond. And we are just so busy. We're so busy because most of us are working. Some of us are working 2 jobs, trying to provide and prepare for this baby. And it doesn't necessarily have to be these very specific things that you do. It can be everything from working together to come up with a name, to creating a space for baby in your home, to playing your favorite songs over and over again because your baby gets familiar with them. But there are definitely intentional things you can do to start readying not just your home, but your heart and your mind and your family. Thinking about who your family is going to be. Who is this little person going to be? What is their place in your family going to be? And what is that going to look like for you? And what are your hopes for the future? And what are your desires in terms of being the kind of parent you want to be? And all of these things are things that you can actually start thinking about, working on, talking about before baby gets here. Obviously, it's going to continue to evolve once you get to know who they are and who they believe they are in your family and the role they ultimately play. But getting these ideas kind of rolling can make it all feel so much more real. And it can make you feel so much more invested and so much more connected to your baby, which then ultimately informs your decisions in the birth process and your healing and your recovery from the birth process, because you definitely see it as this person that you're connected to and not this foreign thing that's happening to you.
Well, and you're both coming from completely different backgrounds, right? You have your own sets of traditions and values and what you think is going to be happening with this baby. And so does your partner. And I also want you to think there's a reason that I always want you to get into therapy before babies come, because you come from a different background than your partner comes from. And I'm sorry, but I don't think all 4 of those parents, and maybe there's even more, were perfectly healthy. So we may have some things that we need to work on and get in connection with each other before this baby even shows up. So get a therapist. That's always going to be my advice. Please get a therapist.
First and foremost, go to therapy.
Please, everybody go to therapy. Find that extra help on the outside. Gives you a neutral background to start painting this picture for your new family. And one of the things that I go with in class right from the beginning when we start the bonding discussions is I want you to think about that one person when you were growing up that thought you were freaking amazing. They helped you break the rules. They wanted you to be who you were. They celebrated what was most intrinsically important to you. They loved you no matter what. That could have been an aunt, a grandma, a grandpa. It could have been one of your parents, but usually it's somebody on the periphery. It could have been a school teacher, somebody that celebrated every ounce of you and made you feel seen, heard, appreciated, and loved. Who are those people that are going to be in your life, your baby's life, that are like that? Think about right now, just kind of in your background, like who would you want to celebrate your kid that made you feel that celebrated when you were a kid? And I want you to think about those feelings that those people made you feel and think about the people that you want to talk to ahead of time. Like, can you be my kid's biggest cheerleader? I want them to have outside influences. I want them to have outside people they can turn to. Sometimes it's godparents. Sometimes it's not, right? If you're not religious, but it's those people that they can turn to that will reflect who they really are when they're not seeing eye to eye with you. So kind of keep that in mind while we're talking about this. And then the other bit is think about those feelings, feel them inside of you. You felt warm, you felt loved, you felt appreciated. Those are the kind of feelings that you want for this new baby and this kid as they grow up in your home. So how are you going to create the feeling of appreciation, love, respect, adoration with your parenting, with the traditions that you're bringing forward, with all of the things that you want to cultivate in your home? If you're cultivating those traditions around the feeling that it's going to invoke in your kid, that's going to change everything for what you two are going to talk about for how to create this new home, because it is going to be different than your parents, your grandparents, your aunts and uncles, your cousins, your brothers and sisters' homes. It's just going to be different by nature because you're two different people. And the other part I like to kind of mention is you have traditions in your family that are really important to your family, whether those are cultural, religious. We always had Wednesdays as family day, whatever that is, it's very important in your family background. But your family, the people that raised you, are not always going to be here. Now, this is your center of family, the three of you when you're just starting out, maybe the four of you might have stepkids, whatever, and half siblings to your new baby. This is your new home. So what's going to work for you moving forward is way more important than what works for every grandparent, aunt, uncle, cousin that thinks you should do. So think about that as families drop off. I don't want to talk about death like that, but it's kind of true. This is your core family. So what feelings do you want to bring forward into your family with your traditions?
I always tell parents when they share with me that they're worried about what kind of parent they're going to be, or they're feeling anxious or nervous about, I just don't know. I don't know. I've never been around kids before. I don't know how to be a parent. And I always say, very similar to what Kara said, and a phrase that I use often is, be who you needed when you were younger. And when you think about those people who showed up for you in your life, if you think about showing up for your child in that way, you can be that person to your child. A lot of us had to look elsewhere for it, but I can remember people in my life whose parents were those people to them. And they often then extended that warmth out to the children around their child and became that person for other people's kids or their kids' friends and stuff like that. But the thought, the consciousness, even the question of, I don't know how to be a good parent. Can I be a good parent? As I tell all of my students, bad parents aren't thinking about how to be good parents. So the fact that you're even listening to this podcast, thinking about this, having these conversations about how to show up for your child and how you're going to be present for your child and how to be the person that your child needs, you're already a great parent and you're already stepping into that role, and the bonding is starting. So just the thoughts, the questions, the seeking to understand already makes you such a great parent. I loved what you said about not necessarily needing to carry things forward from how things were always done in your family, and not doing things for your family and with your children out of obligation because that's how your family's always done it, or the way that your grandma, grandpa, great grandma, not every family tradition is a good tradition, right? Not every family tradition is a healthy tradition. And not every tradition can be brought forward into the modern age. So you want to let go of any guilt or feelings you have about not necessarily carrying every little thing forward from your family traditions, because you never know the beauty that can come from sharing in those traditions with what your partner used to do, creating new traditions yourself as a family. And that goes for not just like when we think traditions, we often think like holidays, meals, that kind of thing, but parenting, discipline, all of those things are rooted in how our family dynamic has changed over the years and moved from generation to generation. And you only need to carry forward into your family what serves your family.
I was so paranoid about being my mom and making my kids feel like she made me feel. And I didn't know how to be a parent, but I knew I wasn't going to be her. So instead of finding the happy medium, I was clear on the other side of, I never had Barbies. This kid's going to have every Barbie on the planet and all the clothes and everything. I got school clothes once a year and that was it. This kid's going to have an unlimited supply of whatever she wants. And also adopting Angie, she was older. She was 5 when she came to live with us. I felt like I was also making up for everything that her mom couldn't give her, right? So I was on the extreme because I didn't understand balance. My husband was like, whatever, like he didn't care. He just was going to love this kid, didn't matter. But I was so intent on her not having my experience that I didn't have that healthy balance. And I wish I had thought it through. And I wish I had talked to a therapist, even though I was in therapy, didn't talk about that stuff. And a lot of it was excessive. And I've had that conversation with Angie where I've apologized and said, yeah, I didn't know what I was doing. I went overboard. And I remember the day she came to me and said, hey, I think she was 9, maybe 10. And she goes, I hate pink and I hate glitter. My favorite color is red and I like black. And I was like, ugh. Everything this kid had was glitter, hot pink, light up shoes, like the whole thing, right? And she asserted herself, which I'm very impressed that she did that with trying to find her own way. But it woke me up to, oh my gosh, what am I creating here? She is her own person and she likes it a certain way. She wasn't able to voice it, of course, because she's getting to know us as well. But once she understood, nope, don't like that. And I like one ponytail and one braid. Like she went Punky Brewster halfway through elementary school, and that's fine. But it was a wake up call to me that I was making things better for myself and reparenting myself through her instead of allowing her to be her own person. So Angie's lucky because I have given her a blanket. I'm sorry for everything I've ever done to fuck you up. And if I continue to do that, please tell me and I will say I'm sorry, agree with whatever it is, and let's get therapy around it. Because once again, I didn't have that and that's something I wanted. So yeah, just food for thought.
Yeah. So, in terms of thinking about that kind of parent you want to be, and like I said, and like Kara has said, you won't know 100% till they're here. It's about that trying to lay a foundation for yourself. So when you meet this baby and you start building this family dynamic, you kind of already know the direction you want to go. And even though you've not parented before, I had never parented before, and I was so young when I had my kids, but I did know some things that were really important to me that I did not want to do with them. And then some things I figured out as I went and shed those things or changed those things as we went. But I knew foundationally what I felt as a void in myself that I wanted to pour into my kids. And it wasn't as much things and physical stuff as Care was feeling with providing for her daughter, but for me it was emotional connection, trying so hard to be as physically affectionate and present with my kids as I possibly could, because I just felt like with 2 working parents, I spent a lot of my childhood feeling like I wasn't seen as like the individual that I was. And it made it really hard to kind of find my footing and even know who I was, because I didn't feel like I could see myself reflected back at all. And so I really wanted to like emphasize that with my kids. And then when I found out I was having triplets, I was like, oh, great. Now I'm having this just like this set of kids that's going to be this like amalgamation together, that they're always going to be this cluster of children that are always going to be lumped together. And how am I going to individualize them and help them feel seen in this huge family that I just created? And so even though I had a plan, I then had to shift my approach. And that's going to happen. That's what's going to come up with these things that you're talking about and planning for, because you just don't know what it's going to be. But one of the big things that we always talk to parents about, and then we have parents share with us, is about the parenting techniques, the discipline. What approach are they going to take in terms of actually rearing up their children and the types of people that they want them to be? And that's something you definitely need to establish with your partner ahead of time. Did they come from a family that spanked? Did they come from a family that yelled? Did you come from a family where nobody talked about anything? Did you come from a family where you would spend hours in your room alone on timeout? Or did you have a family that really talked things out, even though it was hard and there wasn't a lot of punishment? There was a lot more conversation. And figuring out together what your approach can be so that you can be a united front in navigating this, because there's nothing better if you have a partner than being a team in approaching this, because parenting is hard. And as I always tell people, like, preparation to having a baby is so important. Preparation for taking care of a baby is super important, but parenting is lifetime, right? And the rearing up and turning them into good humans is, you only have a few years really to do that, 10 years or so, to really set who your child is going to be and how they're going to move through the world. And so coming at it as a united front is really important. And the best time to discuss those things is before baby gets here and you're in the thick of it.
One of the conversations that I feel is really important to have with your partner are, what family traditions did you really enjoy and what family traditions did you not enjoy? Because you don't want to bring those forward, right? Yes, traditions have a lot to do with holidays, but they also have to do with quality time. Do you want to cultivate family dinners because you never had that growing up? Do you want to cultivate no screen time? Maybe every Thursday, no screens, so that we're just talking to families. Do you want to have game nights on Friday night? One of the things that my sister did with her kids, which was so great, they kept a date night every Friday once their kids were old enough to leave the four of them together. They also would have babysitters come over, like I was one of them. And they would get pizza every Friday. Domino's was delivering pizza. And they left. They had a date night, whether it was going to Costco and doing the family shopping, whatever. And kids got to play games and watch movies and have a babysitter, or when it was themselves, fight for 4 hours by themselves and have pizza, because that's what we did every Friday night. And it was really something fun that even I looked forward to, going over to their house on Friday nights and having pizza with them and just playing. So what kind of experiences are you trying to cultivate in your family that brings that sense of warmth, love, security, feeling safe, feeling heard? That makes a good tradition. I'm a big holiday person, so I wanted to make sure, since Angie came from no traditions and was kind of a fresh slate coming into my house, that we celebrated St. Patrick's Day and we had corned beef and cabbage, and I had a bowl of Lucky Charms for her left somewhere in the house with green milk because some leprechaun dropped off. I mean, I just made up random stuff. Easter, we had a thing. May Day, we planted flowers and took flowers to old ladies. And I made it a point to do something creative and fun that we looked forward to every month, every year, with all of those different holidays. My ex-husband's house, they did every Memorial Day a huge sourdough breakfast, strawberries and whipped cream on sourdough pancakes, and the whole neighborhood showed up. And so we carried that forward too. And it was really fun. And those are memories that I can go back through with pictures. And I don't know what Angie will take forward in her family, but for us, it meant bonding and special things to do with each other and quality time, because that's one of my things, quality time. So what kind of traditions on both sides are you going to talk about? And you know what, Ashley, there's one other thing, the story that has come up. I got to talk about it. Kind of a mixture of parenting techniques, kind of a mixture of traditions. One of my moms shared with me once that when she first started dating her husband, his family knew everything. If you farted, they teased you about it forever. There was nothing that was not talked about in his family. And it was mortifying at first to her, because in her family, you had to censor yourself for every member of that family. You had to not say this because it would upset grandma. You couldn't only say this because Aunt so and so would be ticked off. If you tell your dad, blah, 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 this is going to happen. So she learned that you create stories for whoever is around so that you don't upset them. And in his family, everybody knew everything. And she was so on guard at first. And then what she saw was even if they made a mistake and everybody knew about it and everybody teased them about it and everybody reminded them about it, they loved them no matter what and were there for their support 100%. And they knew each other so well because there were no secrets. They knew each other had their back. And she said, I realized that I wanted my kids to have that kind of a life because, man, these people are secure. They're secure with themselves because they can get teased. They're secure with themselves because they know no matter what, no one's going to turn on them. And she said, I was astounded by it. And I started thinking about that. And my house was kind of like that too. Don't tell your father this. Don't tell your mother this. And I realized that extreme honesty is actually more of a security blanket to kids than masking, because in my family, you mask. So I just wanted to bring that up and see if something like that is familiar in your family, of how we can reset that pattern so that our kids moving forward that are in this dumpster fire of a world have to figure out that we're giving them more skills and more security right off the bat.
Yeah, it's funny because as you talk about this stuff, it's bringing up so many things for me in terms of my husband and I and like how we have navigated this together. When people are around me and my husband, they'll notice right away that we're very physically affectionate with each other. We're literally always like just an arm's reach from each other. When he's driving, I have my hand on his back. We're holding hands, we're touching, and we're just like very physically affectionate. And that is something that we have passed on to our kids. Like we just are a very physically affectionate family. My kids are 13 and it's still hugs and kisses constantly. Bedtime is like a million times. They have to come in, kiss us goodnight, hug us goodnight, because that's something that my husband and I both were really wanting and missing when we met each other, and something that we just have always done with them is just being very physically affectionate. Of course, we will never force any type of affection on them, but it's just something that they are comfortable with. That's the feeling in our family always, is like physical affection, hugs, kisses, touch, hand on the shoulder, all of those things. And then, yeah, our big thing that we say in our family is no secrets in our family. We keep very little from our kids. We're very honest with them. I remember even when we were making the decision to move from California to Oregon, we kind of shared with family about 6 months prior to the move. And I remember my mom said to me, you haven't told the kids yet, have you? And I was like, oh, I mean, they were part of this decision. We haven't shared with anybody else, and we haven't had the kids share with anybody else, but they've known since we started thinking about moving, because I don't ever want to keep anything from them, especially big life-changing things like that, to be dropped on them. I want this family to be a collaboration where we all have a say and an input and are able to share our feelings. And I knew as a highly anxious child that having something like that dropped in my lap always just sent me into a tailspin. And so if I can tell my kids a year ahead of time, hey, just so you know, we're thinking next summer, we're probably going to move to Oregon. This is what we're talking about. This is what the plan's going to be. Then 6 months in, when we're sharing it with people, it's because we've spent 6 months together as a family processing it and working it through before we shared it with anyone outside of the family. And that's, yeah, no secrets, no masking. Sometimes to a fault, we're very honest with each other, but I think that's going to really serve them moving forward through life, that we're not hiding things, we're not keeping things from each other. And it's so important to us that we are just always open with each other. And I think that's going to go a long way too, navigating the teenage years, as far as keeping them safe. If they know that they can trust me, they can be honest with me, and we can go through these things together and come out the other side together, that hopefully I can maintain that trust as we move through these next few years that can be really scary for a lot of parents. Talking about big decisions like that and our move and all these things that can come up as you move through your life as a family, another really good conversation to have with your partner, or even be thinking about yourself, is where do I see this family in 5 years? Do I see this being our only child and we're going to be traveling the world together? Do I see us in a few years adding another child and there's 2 little kiddos running around this house? Do I see us living in California? Do I see us living in Oregon? Do I see us living in Florida? Do I see us living in New York? Where do you envision this family going? Talking about it and thinking about it, even if it feels like a pipe dream, if it feels far away, if it feels impossible, if it feels like it might be, gosh, that would be just pie in the sky. Shoot for it and you're going to land somewhere close to what you're looking for. Having those goals and thinking about what's going to be important to you down the line is really going to help set you up for making those decisions that are going to lead you where you want to go, and being proactive about it rather than sort of letting it happen to you. You're going to feel much more in control, because parenting is a lot of not being in control of things. So being proactive and kind of thinking about what your ultimate goals are for your family is going to give you back a little bit of that semblance of control. And obviously always being able to change your mind, call an audible, make a different decision, but having that vision can be so powerful in sort of guiding the decisions that you make along the way.
Well, and I'm sure everybody just wants to be a homesteader with 25 Pomeranians like I do.
Yes, that
That's
sounds
that's my 5-year goal now that I'm 50. The other way to really get in and bond with your baby, besides the daily rituals that you can do, being very intentional with a bedtime routine, sights, sounds, smells, the song that you sing every night to your baby while they're in utero, reading stories to them. There's so many things. But I want you to start thinking before you go to sleep at night, because those 5 minutes before you go to bed are the most powerful 5 minutes of your day, because it resets your subconscious for what it's going to be processing at night. You can start thinking about, where am I going to be with this baby? What do I want to share with this baby? One of the meditations that we do in, is it class 2, Ashley, I think, Baby in Nature? The Baby in Nature meditation, not only are you learning skills for labor in that meditation, but you're taking them to this most special place that you see yourself going now, that you get to share with your baby for the first time. And what happens through that meditation, and a lot of parents comment, oh my gosh, that was so real. I never thought about taking my 4-year-old there. Some parents take their babies on their backpack and go into that place. And I've also had a mom say, I hate nature. We went to the mall. Great. Wherever, whatever makes you feel connected. But they're starting to see a future and a life with this new kid. And they're seeing a bald baby come out and put their feet in the ocean, or they're seeing a kid with curly hair that looks like their partner walk through the meadow with them and pick flowers with them. Starting to solidify that this is a human being that is coming to teach you great lessons, and that you're going to get to share in those great lessons and teaching them, starts that bonding process way earlier than thinking it's all going to happen afterwards. And I will tell you, you will make different decisions with your pregnancy and your birth if you're putting your baby as a real human that is counting on you to take care of them. You'll take
yes.
more responsibility for decisions, right?
Amen.
You'll research more. You'll ask more questions. You'll take more interest in the medical care you're receiving or not receiving. And you're going to be thinking of everything through the lens of, my child is depending on me to make this birth experience beautiful and not traumatic. My child is going to be coming in and going to these places with me. How am I going to teach them what the birds sound like and the wind on their face feels like? And it's such a bigger picture when you start imagining it and creating it ahead of time. That's one of my favorite meditations for that reason. And another thing, we do have another way of helping you bond with your baby earlier if you want to go deeper with that. I wrote a book that's on Amazon called Conversations with My Baby. There's a chapter in it that kind of explains how the book works. But if you go through the power centers that you already have, starting at the top with connection and intuition and finding your voice, it leads you with different guided prompts to help you connect with your past life of who you were before this baby came on scene, the lessons you learned, the people that supported you in life, and the stories that are behind those, so that you can get your baby to understand who you were before they showed up. And not only that, but the lessons that you've learned in your life that you are bringing forward to help you with your labor, your birth, your postpartum, and raising this baby are recorded in one place. I think the feedback that I've gotten on it with most people is, I had forgotten XYZ, and I realized that's what's going to give me the strength to do XYZ. And there is a grief process that's not really talked about that can happen during pregnancy and also in the thick of postpartum, of you not being the same person. You have literally transformed from this non-parent into a whole other world. Your body's different. Your hormones are different. Your partnership is different. Life is different when you have that baby depending on you. And there are good parts of your past life that are going to come forward, but a lot of it is going to fall away. And that's the part in this journal that I think I like the most, is that you can start processing that and also saying goodbye to those parts and also looking forward to what's next. Anyway, that's another way to go a little bit deeper with connection before baby comes.
And ultimately, all of this that we're talking about when it comes to bonding and fostering this relationship and preparing your life and your space for baby is, as Care said, when you are conscious and bonded to this baby before they even get here, it influences the decisions you make. When you center your baby in the choices you make for your pregnancy, for your birth, for your postpartum care, you can't actually make a wrong decision. When you allow your connection to your baby to guide your decision making and influence your decision making, it will be the right decision for you at the time, for you and your family. And it's not going to be the same as everybody else's, because not everybody has the same baby and the same family, same values, same goals as you. But when you center your baby in that and allow their guidance to help you make those decisions, you cannot make a wrong decision.
All right. I think that wraps it up perfectly. So
Yeah.
make some intentional time to start bonding with your baby now and start processing things with your partner to create a beautiful home. And we will see you next week.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. And remember, it's your body, your choice, and finding your voice is your power. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us in all the places, and go to birtheducationcenter.com for our blog and more online education classes. And we'll see you next week.